not using the pronouns.
Let's just coach them through it.
You guys are our 6th interview, so hopefully I'm getting better at this by now.
Okay. Scott, if you would even scoot a little closer to me so you're looking as close on camera as possible, and even a little forward.
How's that?
There we go. Okay, the camera is rolling, and we are ready. Ladies, if we would just start, can you just tell us your name and spell your name for us? Helen, why don't we start with you?
My name is Helen Kasparbauer. What do you want?
Spell your last name for us.
Kasparbauer.
And what's your phone number in case we need to get in touch with you?
655-2402.
Okay. And you, ma'am?
My name is Hilda Steffes. Hilda, Hildasteffes.
Great. And your phone number?
1-712-653. I don't even know my phone number.
669.
Oh, 669. No, I'm 712-669. I can't even. What is my phone?
All right.
No, you can say it.
Go ahead.
This won't be on it.
Yeah.
669-3697.
3697.
That's just so we can get in touch later.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It isn't going to be on the.
I'm
We're
used
just
to.
trying to acclimate him to being in front of the camera.
Okay. All right. Got those preliminaries.
Let's just start with an overview. Can you talk about the area in Templeton Rye and just kind of, for people who don't know what Templeton Rye is, just give an overview?
Actually, Bryce, can you turn the fan down, please?
Like what? I don't know what you mean.
Actually,
Go ahead.
can you start by telling us, again, repeat your name, tell us where you live, how old you are, and when your family came to the area. And why don't we start, Hilda, with you. So your name, where you're from.
I'm from Templeton. We moved to Templeton in 1928. I was 8 years old. And then my dad bought a farm there, and then it was right in the hard times. And then in order to get his farm paid for, so he had the people come in and cook whiskey. And
Hilda, if you could just start and say, my name is, and tell us your name, and tell us how old you are, and where you're from.
I'm Hilda Steffes. I'm from Templeton, and I'm 87 years old.
Okay, and Helen, can you do the same?
Yes, my name is Helen Kasparbauer, and I'm 90 years old, and I moved to Manning to an apartment a couple years ago. But I did live in Templeton. I was neighbors to Hilda and Kerkhoff and neighbors like that. We were all neighbors.
We lived.
Go ahead.
We lived north of Templeton.
So did we.
Yes.
And what did your families do in Templeton? How they make their living? Hilda?
Farming.
Yeah.
How did your families make a living?
Farming.
What did your father do?
Farming.
Oh, farming. You said farming.
120-acre farm.
Okay.
We lived on a farm north of Templeton, a mile and a half north of Templeton. My dad bought it from Henry Willenberg.
How large were your families, ladies?
Beg your pardon?
How large were your families? How many brothers and sisters?
We had I had 4 brothers and 4 sisters.
I had 3 brothers and 4 sisters. What did I have? 2 sisters and 4 brothers.
Okay.
Makes it 7 in all.
And Hilda, could you tell us your family's connection to Templeton Rye?
Well, to tell you the truth, Dad had them people come in to make whiskey, but my folks was at that time, everything was hush-hush. They were scared us kids would drag it to school. And then we did move in, at night with the big trucks without lights. But we had to go to bed, so but once in a while we had to sneak out a window and see what's going on. But otherwise we never heard too much about my folks. I can't ever remember they talked about it, but that's all.
Do you remember when you used to look out the window? Do you remember anything that you saw?
Well, I saw them putting stuff in there down there. It was dark, you couldn't see too good, but they were working with their big trucks. They were unloading stuff in the hog house.
And what did you look in the? What was the hog? How was the hog house laid out? Was the stuff hidden or?
It was on the south side of the place. It was on the south side, and it was, I don't know. It was big and it wasn't big. It was medium-sized hog house.
And Hilda, if the whole time, if you could just keep looking at Scott and not at me, you're doing great. This is terrific, ladies.
Well, Helen, do you want to? Could you kind of say the same story? What your families are?
Mine's different. 'Cause we was farming, but we were farming with neighbors to them, to the Kerkhoffs and to the Fishers and to the neighbors that way. And then we found out when they had the stills destroyed. That's when we found out about it. And then our neighbors, they had two teenage boys over there. And when the raiders come in, them two boys, they just snuck out of the house and they went over to my dad's house where I lived. So the raiders come over and wanted to know if we had seen the boys. My dad said, no, he didn't. No. But he had them hid in the back room. So they got free. It was okay. They was afraid they'd ask them so many questions that they would be too scared to say the right thing, So that's what happened to them raiders. And then they got raided also.
Can you tell us about that?
My dad went and helped him. Well, he had to go to jail. Her father had to go to jail then for 30 days. And the guy that put the whiskey out there, he says he would take care of it. Anything happened, he would take care of it. And Frank didn't want to have it in the first place. He says, I'll take care of it. I'll pay everything. Well, he got caught, and then there was the guy that put the whiskey there couldn't be found. So her dad had to go to jail for it. And then my dad went over and did the farm work and helped them whatever they needed. And other neighbors helped too, helped them out because he was in that. Her kids was all small then yet. So and I just know all that, man, that they did things like that. That's how you saved each other.
Well, that time, those days, the farmers all stuck together a little more. Wouldn't you say that, Helen?
Yeah.
They always just stuck together. And
You didn't squeal at them. We knew that it was going on, but we didn't squeal on them. So.
well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that either. That Kirkus had people in there, but after a while, now when we find that all out, everybody was cooking whiskey, and to me, it didn't taste good.
Well, they were our neighbors, and then as we knew about it, that they were raided, and
Yes.
the boys weren't home. The bosses, they weren't home, so they busted everything. The whole yard was full of stuff. That they busted everything that was there. Then naturally, we had to go over and see it the next day.
Well, see, when the hogs got sick, when he took that, Dad had 3 hogs, or 4 in a little shed at the side of the hog house, and they got out of the pen, and I can remember that, and then they got in there, and then they was out there wobbling around and couldn't stand and couldn't walk, and Dad said we could all go down and look what they did. It was terrible how they did. He axed the sugar sacks and took axe and busted the sacks, took axe and busted everything in there, rice sacks and everything. Whatever happened to the yeast, I don't know, but then Mom always sent me, I could go down there and ask the lady for a yeast because Mom's going to make some bread. But those women never come up to the house when he was down there cooking with their husbands, if they had their wives along.
So the pigs actually, they got drunk when the raiders came and broke everything up? Is
Right.
that right? Okay, so could you tell that story again and say, one time, and it was
That was her. She says that story.
that was your family?
Yes.
Okay. So if you could just tell that story again from start to finish, that one time the raiders came in and busted up everything, and then the pigs ate the mash. Is that how the story goes?
That's how it goes.
Okay. Could you tell us just from the very beginning, like we haven't heard it before?
Well, they come and they raided that, and they went right down to
And I'm sorry. Could you tell us who raided the revenuers or
the revenues come, yeah, but I don't know who the names were, but the revenue guys come there, 2 or 3, whatever it was. They went right down with their axe and he just chopped it in there and chopped the still and whatever you call it down there, still and sugar sacks and all that. And then when they left, and then Dad went down there. They come up and talked to Dad. What they talked about, I don't know, but that Dad went down. I come in the house and he says we could all go down and look what they did, and then we saw the hogs. They were he said, look over there, them hogs, they're all drinking them out, they're all drunk, he said. And Dad felt real bad, and then he went up the house. But we stayed down there and looked at everything, but I just can remember there was a still there, and the whiskey it smelled real strong down there, and well, I don't know what else.
So how exactly did the pigs get drunk?
They ate the mash. They got out of that little pen. I don't know. Dad had them in a little pen right outside of that hog house. There was 3 hogs, I think, 2 or 3 hogs, and they got in there and then they ate that mash and scooped up that whiskey, and I guess it got too much.
So what is it? And
Then he'd start wobbling, and he would try to walk, and he couldn't walk, and they'd fall down, and he'd get up, and Dad didn't think it was so funny. It just got him, so he went up the house. But Mom and us kids, we could stay down a little while, but then we had to go too, because it wasn't good for us to see that.
Did you think it was funny?
I don't know. I didn't think it was funny. I don't know what to think. What about think? But it sure smelled.
We was too young that time, too. We didn't know that much about it either. You know?
Yeah, we don't.
Ladies, where would the finished product and things like that, where would they be stored on the farm?
Well, then they put it in little kegs. How big were the kegs? I can't even remember. But, you know, keg. Would you know, Helen? I don't know.
Well, wooden kegs.
Wooden kegs with
charcoal in that.
Yeah.
Had to be fermented, and they had to bury that for
yeah,
6
then,
months a year.
Yeah, Dad had that wash house, and he had a heater in there. Then he heated that for, I think, a week.
That was cooking it.
That was aging it, Helen. Them kegs.
The kegs was waiting, but you said cooking.
Oh.
See, when they cooked it, then that was cooking. They had to cook that a couple hours too first, and then that went into tubes like this here, and it went in a barrel, in the kegs. And the kegs all had charcoal in. They all had to be made charcoal, and that charcoal fermented it then.
Then Dad would pile them up one after and way up to the ceiling in the wash house. Then he could just get through and put some stuff, wood in the heater, and then they'd heat that real warm. But then, that chimney was a smoking. But then he had it aged. Then when he had it aged, then he dug, let's see, underground he dug big holes. What would I say, 12? Big as a house, I guess. A big hole in the ground. And then they'd haul the ground away, and then they put bridge planks over that. And then they put the ground back over there so nobody would notice the ground was, And then they had one little certain hole on one side where they could get down and get the kegs out. But how many kegs there was in there, I don't know, but it was full. So then then Dad had them guys, or I don't know who did it, but they dug another hole down in a hog pasture by the hog house. Then Dad would have the kegs aged, and they would come and help him get those kegs in them holes after they were aged in it so long with that charcoal or whatever you call it. And then that made another big hole down there. He did have a few of them in a barn one time, but he took them out because he said that was no good. So they made them holes in the ground that was better to hide.
And just so I'm clear, so there was the one place you were describing where they dug a big hole.
Right.
And then they would take the kegs of rye, and they would put
kegs of whiskey,
and they would put the kegs in the hole
to store it till they need it.
To store it, covered up, and then they put the swing set on top of that. Is that right?
Dad put a swing set on top. He thought that way if raiders would come or somebody would come and they'd say they wouldn't notice that ground was moved.
And Hilda, let me stop you. Can I ask you to tell that whole story from start to finish? If you could say, one place Dad stored the whiskey was in a hole, and just tell us from start to finish that story all the way through the swing set and the guy saying the ground doesn't sound right.
Well,
Just start by saying...
He dug the hole.
Just if you could say Dad dug a hole.
Dad dug the hole, and they dug a hole, and to put the whiskey in there, and in order so the people wouldn't notice it that he had that ground moved, so that he put that swing set on top, make believe that the kids, would swing on there, were walking on there and swinging around and walking on there, that the ground was done by some playground. You know what I mean? It looked like somebody was playing with it. And then down in the hog barn, down in the hog pasture, he just filled it up. Nobody would go down in a hog pasture.
Okay, Hilda, I'm going to ask you, and I'm sorry to ask you to do this. This is such a great story. We want to get it just right because this is the funniest story we've heard all weekend. So I'm going to ask you if you could start the story saying, one place Dad hid the whiskey was under a swing set. And if you could just tell, like you haven't even told us yet before. We're hearing the story for the first time. So just, if you could tell us the story where he hid it, and if you could start off by saying, one place Dad hid the whiskey was under a swing set. And tell us again about the hole, about the kegs, the whole story. Because that's a wonderful, wonderful story, and we want to get it just right.
Well, he dug a hole.
No, but if you could say one place Dad...
One place he dug a hole.
No, I'm sorry. One place Dad
Oh,
hid the whiskey.
I always forget. One place Dad dug a hole so he could hide the kegs. And so he dug a hole in the ground, and then he made a hole enough and put pitch blanks over the top and the ground over the top so they couldn't see that. He thought they couldn't notice it. And then one place they had the opening so they could get the kegs up and how that was. And then he put the swing set on top because the neighbor kids would always come over and play. And he says, I thought nobody would notice it, that the ground was moved there because the kids would be all walking around there with the ground. And then nobody would notice that there was a hole under there.
And you said that the one gentleman who had come
And
over,
then one kid, he was swinging, he jumped off the swing. We always took turns pushing each other on the swing. And then he went down and he said, what's the matter? I believe this earth is moving. And he said, the ground feels loose. That's the way I should say it. The ground feels loose, and then we didn't think none of that, we didn't dare say nothing. But then we went in the house and told Mom, and Mom says, oh boy. No, I don't know what she said, but at least she said, we better watch that. But do you think the ground was moving? Well, as kids and all, said, I don't know.
And what about Helen? Do you know of any spots where people would hide or how did you guys do that?
Oh yeah, it was hid in cornfields and stuff. And one incident was by close to a post on the fence row, was on the post there, and then they found somebody did it at night too, but there was some fresh ground dug up there. Then the boys went out there and they looked the next day what it was, and it was whiskey boiled in, and they took it home. And then we got whiskey. That was one, and a different one would be when a snowstorm come along there. On the side of the road, there was nobody's property. They buried it in snow, and snow would blow over it, and then they watched by a certain light pole. That's where this was then, and then they had to watch it when the snow would go away. They had to get it out and move it again to a barn under hay, put hay covered up with hay or something like that. And,
yeah, they also to hide a gallon of whiskeys, gallon jugs of whiskey. They also dug post hole diggers in the barn. When we bought our farm from Henry Wilmer, there was post hole diggers from. Henry Wilmer bought it from Kirkus, but there was post hole holes in the barn. With a post hole digger, they dig way down and they stuck the gallon jugs down in there too.
and covered up, you wouldn't see it, so you wouldn't.
Yeah, they didn't cover the top up, they wouldn't see it. So they didn't want to get caught with that whiskey, I suppose.
Yeah. If they had a snowbank there, see, that wasn't nobody's property, that was state property,
Yeah, but that's,
so nobody
yeah.
claimed it. If it got found, it was nobody's, they wouldn't claim it.
You want to go?
What was the story about the pony?
What?
The pony?
Well, the pony? Oh, that's what Elvin always said that.
That was before they were married, that was when he was little, yeah. That was my brother then. They went out in the field and ride ponies, just to look for it too. If they could find some, they'd take it. And she said, Alphons said that they put dumped the water out. So the dad wouldn't find out about it. They took water out there, but instead they come back with the whiskey then.
Yeah, but he wouldn't tell his dad.
No, I wouldn't tell his dad.
Well,
No,
that's what Elvin always told me.
Yeah, that's
He
right.
said that's how they got their whiskey.
Is that they would go and try to find someone who had hid
They-
it and they'd replace it with water?
Well, they through the grapevine or something like that, they knew that they were hiding whiskey kegs in farmers' cornfields. And wouldn't you say that, Helen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
They
then,
could tell when the ground was worked up then, that meant
Yes.
something was there. We knew that then, see.
and then, like Elvin always said, him and Herbert, they always loved their pony. They'd take it between the corn rows and then they'd find a keg. They figured they was there because they was to the grapevine. They always heard talk about it. And then they thought, well, they go up there and get whiskey.
By that time, it was in jugs, and when it was
Yes.
in kegs, it was fermenting yet.
Yes, but it wasn't gallon jugs.
By the time it was set in the cornfields, then it was ready to go, ready to sell.
Yeah, they would get it and they sell it. Like they always, well, after that, they always said that Dottie Grenman would sell whiskey by the jugs. Then he'd go out to the cornfields and get it. See, and that's how they started it, where they found out there was in the farmers' cornfields.
What do you think? There's probably some jugs still sitting around Templeton somewhere.
Yep, I do.
I bet there's plenty of
I
jugs
do.
around somewhere.
They
I bet there's
got
plenty of them buried someplace we don't know about it.
Yeah, I do.
You want to keep? Go ahead.
Do you remember a time when the federal people came to see your house? That they came to check on whether you had whiskey or not? Did you have to go and hide it or anything?
We didn't have any at ours. And the only time they had it is when, at one time, when that one guy just said he was going to make it right with him. Otherwise, Frank never cooked whiskey either.
No, my dad.
Never did. He didn't even before that either, but that's what happens.
But
there.
one day the raiders come back again, and then they wanted to search again. We had whiskey in the house, and their dad said no. And then by that time, I was in the living room, and he was just, I don't know where he was. Mom, going to put that whiskey jug in a cupboard in the bedroom. They had a closed cupboard, didn't have a closet. And then I must have brought it in there. I was scared, so I put it in there. I must have banged the door too hard, and I looked around. There he stood. He says, "You got a jug? You got a bottle there?" And I says, "Yes." Yes. And then he laughed at me. No, he didn't laugh at me, but he at least thought it was funny. But then they took it along, and then he told Dad he should go to the store and buy whiskey. He should just forget about having whiskey in the house. So they took that bottle along.
Did you get in trouble, or did your dad get in trouble?
Nope, they didn't. They just let Dad go by just nothing. He says, "Well, it was just a warning," he said.
Was there a time that your mother had to hide the...
Well, that one time when after Dad got caught, then there was a car come down the lane, and then Dad said, "You better hide that whiskey bottle." He says, "Well, I got one in there. He had home brew in there." So Mom sat in a chair and she put it under her dress. And then, well, they come in and talk, but I don't know who it was. There must have been them guys, and then they left. So there was nothing after that.
So she never stood up and.
No, she never stood up. She kept sitting because years ago they wore long dresses.
We had to protect everybody. Everybody
Yes.
protected everybody.
So everybody in the community was in on it. Everybody protected
knew
everybody.
We knew about it. We knew about the neighborhood anyhow, and the town too.
A big, a whole lot of the farmers doing it. Was this an important way to make a little extra money?
Yes,
What was
yes.
the role of cooking to the community?
There was no money. We didn't have no money.
That what corn was? What did we get? 10 cents a bushel, and everything was cheap. Eggs were 10 cents, and this and that. My dad had a big family, and so he in order to get his farm payment made, he borrowed so much money. He got the down payment from wherever he got it. I don't know, but at least he couldn't make ends meet. So that's why he had to. Somebody talked him into it, I suppose, to let the whiskey people come in there and make whiskey, and that's where he saved his farm. And that time everything was high priced, or not high priced, but then I know Mom and Dad always said we saved our farm with them whiskey people coming in making hooch.
So he didn't actually cook them himself. Then.
No.
My dad never cooked with it. He just had.
They just paid them for rent of their buildings. Yeah.
Do you know how much they paid? and
Yeah,
how
that
they
I
got
can't.
that?
That I don't
I
remember.
have no idea.
And I always wondered, what in my back of my mind, I don't know how much they ever got for Dad heating them kegs, each keg, how much. It went by the kegs, but I can't just recall how that was.
And people like their whiskey. This was again. You both are from Templeton, is that right? Did I
Right.
Yes.
We were
Yeah.
neighbors.
And folks up there, and of course up in Carroll and so forth. These are what good. You had German and Irish and folks from everywhere that really liked their whiskey, huh?
They did. Well, when they thrashed and stuff like that, they always had that whiskey, didn't they?
A little bit, but they didn't get drunk or nothing. Just
No,
drink it.
they didn't. They just passed it around. But my dad always said that helped his rheumatism. That was the best medicine.
Yeah. Some people did it. They took a glass of whiskey every morning when they got up,
Right.
just for that reason.
Ladies,
They liked it better than I did. I too little, I guess.
we heard a story about some folks when they would, at recess in school, they would go to the cemetery to see where the rye was stored. Have you ever heard that story?
No, I never. Not that I know of.
I never
Not
heard of
my
that.
boys, I didn't
I
hear.
can't remember that. I can't remember hearing that. Right now, I can't.
Do you know if the priest or the mayor or the sheriff did any of those? We've heard that some of those folks enjoyed their whiskey and even maybe sold some or whatever. Do you know? Did you know of any prominent folks in town or who may have sold or bought some Templeton rye?
I don't know about the priest. It was a gossip. I don't know if it was true or not, but they said they did. Had it in the basement. Now, if that's true or not, we don't know. We can't prove it, but they said almost every other house in town had some little stills, just little ones, you know.
I think the whole town of Templin was noted for stills and all that. Don't you think, Helen?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it sounded. That whole community was like that, but we didn't. I didn't know about it. But see, there was always our parents were, nobody talked about each other.
See, yeah, they didn't talk about it. And the only ones that got caught is those that got squealed on.
Yes.
Then the cops had to come out. Otherwise, they could walk by and just look the other way.
And who all you say? Because we've heard a lot about the revenuers, and our impression was they were state, but were there also federal? Who are the? What kind of cops would come out and break out a still?
Now there you got me. There's.
I wouldn't know.
They always said the federal, whatever you call it. What did you say it was? Federal what? They come out federal.
Yeah, what he said, that was, what word did you use?
We've heard revenuers.
Revenues.
Revenue. That's what we go back with.
Revenue.
The revenue come. That's all I can remember. The revenues come out. And
That's the revenues. That's all I know too. Who they were, we don't know.
Do you ever remember if they were in the community? Would you assume? I mean, did people know that that's who they were because they didn't recognize them?
Some didn't. And
I
would
think
just-
some did, but I no.
And now,
They would just avoid it. If they wasn't pointed out, then they'd just forget it. They looked the other way. I know they did.
Now, of course, they cooked in other communities. You know, we've
Yeah.
heard about it. But Templeton was Templeton different than the other communities' rye or whiskey?
Oh yeah, that had to be the best. We was there.
Could you say the Templeton whiskey was the best? Could you repeat that?
Oh, that's what they say. Sure, that was the best whiskey there was. Is Templeton rye.
I would say that too. That they always
just
said
always
that
said that, but-
you can't beat Templeton rye.
So it was better than the other Iowa whiskeys.
Well, we don't know.
Well, see, years when they made that, they couldn't buy whiskey. How do you call that when they was left? They made a law, then they could make whiskey. See, that was after that. It was cooking just before there was law. They couldn't buy whiskey legally. So this was done before then. I don't know when that changed.
Prohibition in 1929 or
Yeah, it was in 20s, 19 and 20s, and through there. That's when it was.
But so you would say, and if your answer is yes, could you just sort of repeat what I'm saying? So Templeton was sort of famous as the best whiskey
Yes.
in Iowa and maybe even the Midwest. And if
Yes.
that's true, can you repeat what I just said?
Yeah, I'd say it was the best whiskey that was around at that time. In the 1929, 30 in there. That's when the main thing was going in between 27, 29, 30 in that area. About 20 years of that.
So, and I'm sorry, one more time, if you could say, Templeton Rye was known to be the very best whiskey.
Okay. Yes, Templeton Rye was the best known whiskey around there. Did I say it right this
You
time?
said it just
Absolutely.
right. Perfect. Home run.
Ladies, I have on here something about the free whiskey from Dottie Greteman. Does that ring a bell?
I don't know about free, but then he was cooking it too. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, he was cooking it, but I can't ever remember hearing him pass out free whiskey. The only one I can remember passing out free whiskey was Monsignor Barnes. He would have little bottles he'd pass out. He'd have some kind of associations later on in years, and then he'd say, "Well, I got a sample of Templeton Rye. That's good stuff."
See, that was in the later years already. Then.
Yeah, that was in the later years.
That wasn't in probation days, so yeah.
Who was tell us who the Monsignor is for folks who aren't local? Who to tell us? Monsignor. What's his last name?
Barents.
Barents was, and then tell us who he was.
He was.
But if you could start off, Monsignor Barents was. Just start off by saying the words I just said. Monsignor Barents was, and then tell us who.
Who
he
was his parents? Monsignor.
But just that he was the local priest, right?
Yeah, his
He
parents.
was originally
No,
from
he
there.
didn't ask about the parents.
Monsignor Barents was a classmate.
He just wants you to talk about Monsignor Barents.
Oh,
She's trying to think of who his folks were.
Well, ladies, 'cause
Tell you what you want.
if we're cutting this and you say he, we might not know who you're talking about.
Monsignor
so if you
Barents.
restart over, instead of saying he, say Monsignor Barents was the priest rather than he was the priest.
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah, Monsignor
That's your
Barents.
story. Yeah.
But Monsignor Barents, but I can't remember his parents.
He didn't care about it.
But
That's
you
all
know,
right.
He don't care about his parents.
yeah, just tell us he was the priest in Temple.
Oh.
Was he the priest in Templeton?
Senior.
Yes.
Yes, Monsignor Barents was a priest. He used to go to school with us, and he got to be a priest.
But,
But-
when he had the whiskey, he was a Monsignor already.
When he had the whiskey, he was a Monsignor yet. But where he got it, I don't know. But he some occasions then he'd pass out little bottles. He'd try to tell him right. That's good stuff.
Because he would be outside of town and these people would have heard of the whiskey, so that was his way to kind of,
Advertising.
To advertise Tamlin Rye, that's exactly right.
right. That's neat.
That's great.
But that was years later.
Right, understand.
Compare notes here, or if there's anything that you have.
Well, I think she covered everything.
What's this one?
Ed Birrell. Okay, who was Ed Birrell?
Can you tell that story about
And
Ed Birrell?
tell about Ed Birrell, how he was the last one to have still there, and then that whole story. And who was he?
And the
And
way
how
I
is he
told you
related to
what he
Frank?
has
Hell-
supposed to pay.
What?
How is he related to Frank Fisher?
Ed Birrell was Ed Birrell. Ed Birrell and Frank Fisher. No, and how
Ed
did
Birrell was your mother's
yeah,
brother.
my mother was Ed Birrell's brother, and then he begged to get in there, and then Dad didn't want to leave him in because he was getting. I don't know why he didn't want to leave him in, but he begged, and he said he'd do all kinds of stuff. Helen said, and then but he went in there. He only was in there a couple of days or a week, and then he got caught. But that was my dad, Frank Fisher's brother-in-law, right? Yeah, my dad. It was my mother's brother. So he left him in. And then that's how it got, and we got caught.
He was then the last one to cook.
That was the last one that was made the whiskey at our place. Dad wanted no more of that. So then he got caught and he had to sit in jail, and he didn't want no more of that.
He promised him if he get caught, he'd pay everything, whatever it needed, and he didn't do it. He had to sit in jail.
Can you tell us some more details about the time he was caught, when it was, how was he caught, what happened, and again, just so people understand, since you know people listening to the interview won't have heard our conversation, if you would say, how many times was he caught? Just the once?
Dad was only caught once with Ed Birrell.
Right. Can you say? Can you
was
repeat
perfect.
that
That
and
was
tell us the story? So Dad was only caught once with Ed Bureau, and then tell us the story of him getting caught.
Well, he come and he wanted to move in. He said he'd like to move in and cook some more whiskey, make whiskey if Dad wanted to, but Dad didn't want to do it. But then he did let him in there, but he was only in there a week, 10 days, and heard the revenue was coming. He got caught. Isn't that what you say, Helen, too?
How did he get caught?
What
Well-
happened?
Well, they come down and they come in the house. We're the revenue guys, and we're going to raid your place. And then he went right straight to the hog house. So evidently they was reported. We figured it. And then he went to the hog house, and with an axe, he chopped everything up.
Was that the common way that
That's
the
the way
revenue?
they did it. That's the way they did it. They didn't come. They maybe come to the house to let you know they were there, but they took
Well,
over.
yeah.
They took over.
They took over. They went right to the hog house. They didn't look in the barn or nothing. They went right straight to the hog house.
Which makes you think they were
Any
tipped
place,
off.
wherever they thought it was going to be, that's where they would go.
Right.
Did they take your dad immediately to jail then?
No. I don't know.
They had to go to court a little bit, stuff like that, I guess.
That I can't remember
No,
either.
I don't know how.
Did you go to see him then while he was in jail?
Yes,
She's trying to tell us she drove the car, and I
I
said it was this big.
no. They said I went. I know I took him to Carroll to that jail. He was a jailhouse that was with courthouse, and we had to bring him tobacco and matches and all other stuff, and I took Mom up. But I know I was young. I thought I was 16, 17, and I took Mom out there. I didn't have a car license, but I could drive a car. I could see out of the steering wheel.
And that was to the jail in Carroll, Iowa.
That was the jail in the Carroll, Iowa. And he was there 30 days, and he said never again.
All right.
Is that a wrap?
Any
All
other
right.
any other stories, ladies?
I don't know anything else.
That was great, lady.
Hey! Bravo!
Now, if y'all
Great
want to
job.
taste it, she's probably got a sample in her pocket.